This session is a short cataloging refresher. So the two main methods that you have for cataloging your library resources is via manual cataloging in the resources function. We can get to them via the wizard, or we can use Z cataloging, so we're getting records from another source. So your workflows may vary quite a lot, but when I was a cataloger, I was taught to do a bib check first. So basically that was getting my pile of books, going to perhaps the OPAC or the resources search and searching for the item. So it could be by title or it could be by ISBN, whatever was the most convenient. So I'm going to do this search on Richard III. And I'm going to run this search, and I've got so many items with Richard III in the title, so it's quite a topical area at the moment. Now I may look at my book and see, yeah, that might be the same book, it might not be, so I would go and have a look at my record. So hopefully I should be able to tell that, no, this is not the same item, or yes, it is the same item and I need to add an additional copy. Or the third option that some of you might not necessarily be aware of is to duplicate records. Now, I would end up with three piles, so items that I know are brand new items that I have to add additional copies for, and then duplicate, that is for, let's say, a later edition of an item that I already have. So if the main information is still the same, but things like the ISBN and the date of publication have changed, all I need to do with that is I can duplicate it to a brand new record, make the changes that I need to, so let's say it's 2015 item. I can then save that and I can add my copy. So this is a brand new resource. Okay. So one way to start with your cataloging, particularly if you're manually cataloging, is to bib check first. So you've got those three distinct piles of books, so you can just get right on with it, adding your new items or your copies or whatever. Now, you can skip that step quite comfortably if you're using Z cataloging, preferably with a subscription data source like Nielsen's or BDZ, or a reliable free source. Now, if you're going to use Z cataloging through resources, one of the things that you must do first is, in the Z cataloging option, you must set preferred sources. So if I browse sources in Z cataloging, I can make certain sources preferred. So it really is just a matter of editing those and indicating that they are preferred. So you just click in preferred yes and save it. So in my list I have several preferred sources. So when I'm using Z cataloging in its own right, all those preferred sources are highlighted. But I'll show you what happens when we use Z cataloging the other way, and that's via resources itself. If I go back to the resources area, so we would go into adding a new resource. So what I was saying before about doing the bib check, if you know it's a new item that you do not have, you can go straight to add and ignore the box here where you can enter in a title or an ISBN of an item. So you can scan in the ISBN or you can type in a word from the title. And it is searching the title field. It's not a full text search like it might be if we were to use any words. So if I type in my term and click Add, so you will get this option at the top. So it will tell you here whether or not it has found records that match your search. So it has found records that match archaeology, but it asks me, do you wish to add this manually anyway, or do you want to add via Z cataloging? But we have this list of items where we have multiple results. So again, I would be looking at my book and saying, oh right, okay, is this the same item? So if I go down to my bottom record here, I can have a look at this. Again, I can check the details, possibly the author and the publication year, and then I might say, yeah, that is the same item. I can add my copy. Or, as I said before, if it's not the same item, but if it's a later edition, duplicate that if it was the later edition of an earlier item. Or if it's not, I can click on List, and that will take me back out to the list, and I can choose another item if I want to check further items. Now, I'm just going to cancel out of this and start the process again. So if I go to New, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan in the ISBN. So I am looking for something quite specific. So if I have a different edition or a different publisher's version of this item, I'm not going to find it. So scan the ISBN, it goes straight to the next screen. So it's saying that there was no match for this, so I have the option to manually add the new resource or use Z cataloging. So I'm going to use Z cataloging for this particular item. Now, this will not work unless you have those preferred sources set up. So if you have not done that and you go to this next stage, it will tell you at the top, it can't do that. You need to set up preferred sources. So it's a fairly distinct error message that you're going to get. But I have found this item in 2 of my 4 preferred sources. So you'll note that, and I did mention it before, that you can search more than one source when you're using Z cataloging directly. So we have our records here. So with the Z cataloging process, if I found a single item that I've searched for, I can click on the I for import link here. So I can import that record just by clicking on the I. Some people, I've noticed, they do click the tick, the checkbox, and then import. Well, if you're only importing one record, it is faster just to click the I link. And then again, just like it would standard Z cataloging, you are presented with the add copy window here. So you can select the details that you would put into your copy records. So the branch. So I choose the branch first if I have several. The collection. So the collection is the section of the library that the item is in. And then the resource loan category. So that field is to actually say how the item is issued. I'm going to put this in my reference section. So essentially reference resource loan category, it doesn't go out. And then I go to the top, and even though it's first on the screen there, I put in the barcode last, because if I scan it in, it goes straight into the next stage. So adding in the copy details there. So with Z cataloging and with ordinary cataloging, remember what is in the classification field in your resource is taken over to the copy. So I might take out information that I don't want, extra numbers if I'm using Dewey classification. I might use the suffix, the first 3 letters of the author's surname. So with the suffix, that is not generated by the system if you are using Z cataloging. You will need to put that in if you use that. And then I have the resource loan category there with my collection. Other things that I might put into the copy of an item are the cost. You have price and cost. I tend to put in the cost of the item because this is used in overdue notices. So I can put that cost in, and I can also choose the cost currency. So I don't tend to worry about this too much unless I am dealing with several currencies. So some of you from overseas, who I know a few of you are attending today, you may buy things in different currencies. So we have euro, we have pounds, and other European currencies there. The other thing I will point out to you is alert message. The alert message, and you've got the help text here, so have a look at this if you're not quite sure what a field does, because it does very often tell you what it will do. You can see this pop-up window come up when you're in the circulation desk specifically. So this could be if an item has a CD or some other supplement that you want to check on loan and return. So you can put in a message there. So when I'm manually cataloging items, that's the main information that I would be putting in. So I can now save that record, and I can return to the title. The collections here, if you have a collection, that will have been set up in management. The management collections. I have several added here. Reference, for instance. One thing I could do in a collection when I add it as new, so if I edit this, I might have on my spine labels a code like R or REF for reference items. I might have codes for different collections. What this will do is that if I go back to my cataloging and resources, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use show new records only. So if you want to look at things that you've only just catalogued, that's what this button does. So you click on that, and it's brought up a few things that I've added very recently. And there's the item there. And I'm back to that item, but what I wanted to show you, pardon me, is that this code, beg your pardon, this code has come from that collection. So that's to stand for what we have on our spine labels. So it saves you having to type in that information when you add a copy. It also allows you, if you want to remove this or change it at some point, if it's in the collection, you'll be able to do it globally. Another thing I will point out, there's the classification that was with the Z cataloging record. So If I want to keep it consistent, I would edit this and change it. The other thing that you can do, now I'll caution you with this, if you do this, you're not going to be able to search on classification in your resources, but you could take that out altogether. And the effect is that when you search for it in your OPAC, what we will see in the first result screen will be the copy classification. So it will be the same as what we see when we go into hover or detailed view. So that's something to consider. However, that is the sort of decision that you'd probably make at the beginning of cataloguing items, because it's not something that you want to change when you're in the middle of doing, you've catalogued so many books, you don't want to change it halfway through. But with your cataloguing methods, so how you classify items, the degree or the amount of information that you put in a catalogue record, particularly if you're manually doing it, I think it's a good idea to document that. So document your processes so you can pass that on to other people if you're lucky enough to have assistants in the library, or you're passing it over to someone who might be replacing you in the role of librarian at your school or your institution. So it's good for them to know the background so you can keep this information consistent. I've completed this catalogue record. I'm going to go back to new, and I'm going to scan in another ISBN. So just repeating that process. So we have the details for the item. We've got that wasn't found. So we can choose manually or Z cataloging. So if I choose ZCat, it hasn't found it in any of my sources. So I would need to go back and start the process once more. So back to resources and to new. Now if I just scan in the ISBN again, like I know I wasn't going to find anything, if I choose manually add a new resource, it puts the ISBN into the title field. It's the field that's set as the focus for when you start a catalogue record. So you might just delete it, or you might cut and paste it further down. I've got my book here. Some of the other things that you might determine in your, let's say, your work manual, your procedures manual, is how much information you fill in for an item. Now I've got a book that continues with my theme of World War I. So I've got my title. So what fields do you fill in? I suppose the guide that I use is, what do I need to be able to find it? So title. GMD is put in automatically, so text for books. Format, if you use Ollie, so if you've got Ollie, and also some of you may be aware of the Orbit inquiry system that we've just released recently. So Orbit uses these formats, and our primary product Scout also uses them. So I can say, right, this is a fact book. So it allows me to separate items in the search. So if you don't have any of those, I would ignore that. Now, author, you would definitely use that. Now, this author field is an authority field. It has these checkboxes. So a question comes up, what do these mean? Now with author, I probably wouldn't tick any of these. It might be more useful for subjects further down. But if I type in my author's name, it'll be looking for his record, and there is an entry for John Masefield. That's my author. Now, contains means that I would be looking for an author that contains that word but doesn't necessarily start with it. So that's what contains refers to. Now, verified, that means is that you have gone through being a very conscientious cataloguer and you have gone through all your authors and said this is the right form of this author's name. So it's not JH, it's John. This type of thing I would not worry about. It's not worth the time. It does not affect searching, so don't worry about that. The other option is in use. So if you want to specifically look for items that are already in use, then it will bring up those items. But for our authors, if you follow the usual protocol of the surname first, you wouldn't need to tick any of these. So there's my author coming here. Now, if my author did not appear as I typed in there, you would only get the option of creating a new authority entry. So that will apply to author, to corporate author, which I would not generally worry about, to subjects, to lists. You are able to add in a new entry. Now, if I click new at this point, now generally I wouldn't because my author is there, but if I click new, it's created a new entry for what I've typed in here. So what I would usually do, if I just delete that, I would continue typing in my author until I had completed it, then I would click new there. If you don't do that, if you only type part of it in and you realize you've made a mistake, you can edit the entry. So that little button there allows us to edit. So here you are able to verify your authors or your subjects or whatever. You can also put in information like see references, preferred, non-preferred terms, related, see also references. So authors have this as well as subjects, like we discussed in the previous session. So this is where you could add this in. You've also got scope notes. So, and if you want to be very pedantic cataloguer, you can put instructions about how a particular author is used, or probably better, how to use a particular subject. So editing will allow you to view that. But any mistakes, if you really want to do it here, do it in the catalogue record itself. I'm just going to cancel out of that. And I'm going to delete that extra one and add in the proper one here. So other fields that you might put in, the edition field, if it's a second or subsequent edition. Don't worry about first edition, it's not worth it. Place of publication, again, this is preference on your part. Some people don't bother to do this. That's fine, it's more for your information. So publisher, I'm typing in my publisher's name. I've actually got 2 entries here. Searching for it prevents you adding in duplicates. This is slightly different. I would need to merge these together really, but in authority control. So I'm going to choose my preferred one. So publication date goes in there. Description, I don't worry about that too much unless there's something very specific about this item, its physical makeup. I was saying like before, it might have a CD or something else with it. I tend to to keep it to, let's say, hardback or paperback. Series. I just type in series here. I've got this added in as an example here. With adding in a series, it's useful if the item belongs to a series of books. You have this part field underneath. So if it is a numbered part, you can put that number in here and it appends the series entry. Next, we've got notes and holding notes. I don't tend to worry about these too much because further down I have abstract where I can put in information about the book. So the blurb from the back of the book. Typically you'll get that sort of information when you use Z cataloging. But here's our subjects, so I can type in my subjects here. So if I use the World War theme again, here are those related and broader terms that we discussed in the last session. So I can choose from that if I want to. You can see how it's marked those that I've already selected them when they come down further. So I can select more than one subject. I may have several pages of subjects. And contains, so if I have 29, if I just put in war and click contains, now that's gone up to 93. So you see what a difference that makes. It not only starts with war, but it contains war. So I've got quite a few pages till I get to the war entries there. Classification, so that's where you would put in your Dewey classification. If you're not quite sure, if you don't have the Dewey schedules, I would cheat from a previous item. So search your catalogue or check on the shelves for something similar with that. And then you've got your ISBN. So that's the last thing that I'm going to add in. But I'm keeping in mind putting in enough information to be able to search for the item. And then I save, and then I go through the add copy details. So it's the same as it would have been before. One of the things here, I tend to keep similar items together in terms of collections and resource loan categories, so I'm not having to change this each time I add a copy. It's just one of those time savers. The same thing there. There's the classification. I can fill in the rest of the details and then I can save that. Okay. I don't have a code for non-fiction, so nothing appeared there. What we're looking at the full copy, we can return to the title. So keep in mind you're putting in information so people can find it in the search area. So I'll be able to find that book now. And just one last thing before we conclude. Z cataloging. You notice that we had several sources highlighted. The other thing that you can do with Z cataloging is that you can search for more than one item. So ISSBN there, scan them in one at a time or type in the ISBN and click add. There we go. So I'm using some of the items that I've looked at already. So there I have 4 items. I can then run my search. So it's searching all those databases that I had highlighted. Here are the records. If I now wish to choose more than one item, this is where I would tick and click import. And then what usually happens is that the last book that you scanned in would probably be the one that appears first. So you can see I've already got this in here. Usually you won't have a copy, but it won't bring up the Add Copy window. You will need to do that. But you may want to make changes to the record before you go to the Add Copy process. So I've been showing people when they've been using our Scout, our primary system, to edit this to put in the format. So those of you who might have Orbit, you may go in, choose Fact format, maybe change the classification, and then save that, and then add your copy. And then the changes that you've made to the classification are reflected there. So again, I'm just going to briefly add that and save it.